The last part of this chapter on irregular verbs is what happens with liquid verbs. What we mean by liquid verbs are verbs with an M, an N, an R or an L in them. I know those aren't in alphabetical order, but the word mineral can be quite helpful here because it reminds you of what we're talking about. And these are what we call linguistic liquids. So you can go n, r, l. Those aren't true consonants in terms of being stops, which is what we usually think of, because they're not single one-off sounds. They can all be maintained. So n, r, l can all be longer than a single sound. And Greek doesn't much like adding a sigma to these. So weird things are going to happen anywhere where you need to add a sigma to a liquid verb. What you've got here is a section from Duff. You'll see that what happens is no sigma in the future or aorist. Instead, you just get a liquid stem. So spero goes to espera. You've still got the aorist endings. This isn't a strong aorist that now takes imperfect endings. It's a liquid verb doing things slightly different. You've still got that alpha there that you've seen is like elusa, that you've seen as characteristic of the aorist. In the future, you may well change things very slightly. So notice we've done things like lose a lambda in apostello and angelo, or lose an iota in spero and agero, or apoctano. But you may also, with things like meno and crino, actually just extend to being a contract verb. So meno gives you men-e-o, but you're never going to see men-e-o in a text because that's now a contract verb. So what you're actually going to see is an accented meno like that in the present and an accented meno like that in the future. So this is one of the places where accentuation matters, because for liquid verbs, it's what gives you the difference between the present and the future in some cases. There are then those last two verbs that have been highlighted, apopnersko and ballo, where although they've got a liquid in their stem, they do actually have strong aorists going back to that imperfect type style. So these are strong aorists, and you do just need to learn them as slightly irregular ones in their own rights. So liquid verbs, if they've got an M, an N or an R or an L in the stem, that won't combine with a sigma. The sigma will get lost, and therefore other things will need to happen in order for you to notice that this is an aorist or a future. That might be simply adding on aorist endings. It might be changing the accentuation because it's contracted. It might be changing the stem slightly. Various things will happen. What you need is just to learn a chart of these, really. We call them principal parts. So principal parts. I'll add some information about this up on Canvas. It is covered in the textbook much later on, but the basic idea is already relevant here. Principal parts are what you'll find in a dictionary that will help you know how to find your way around an irregular verb. So, with a verb like luo, it's easy because it's regular. So you can derive all parts of the verb from just knowing that it's luo and it's regular. That is not true of something like lambano. So what's the minimum number of parts of lambano you can learn that will help you to learn the whole verb? So, principal parts. If you take a verb like luo, because it's regular, anything you see of it, you can work out once you know A, luo in the dictionary, and B, that it's regular. You're going to take your stem lu, and you're going to apply your regular endings to it. These are explained to you later in the book when you've met all of these forms. I'm going to just put them all in now for the sake of giving you the chart. Don't worry about the forms that we haven't met yet. So you know luor, future, add an infix, and then the endings. Aorist, that same infix, but now we need an augment, and then your endings. And then the perfect passive and aorist passive you will meet later in the book. You're still going to add stuff on the front, so an epsilon for the aorist and an epsilon for the aorist. And then the perfect passive and aorist passive you will meet later in the book. You're still going to add stuff on the front, so an epsilon for the aorist and a lambda epsilon for the perfect. You can have a theta now for the aorist passive, and nothing for the perfect passive, and a kappa for the perfect active, and then some endings which look like that. So we're not going to worry about these forms because you haven't met them yet. But for completion's sake, that's what it will look like. So if you looked up luo, you wouldn't need any of these parts because they're completely regular and you could guess them all. If, however, you take a verb like lambano, actually you need to know these 6 parts to ensure that any part of the verb that you ever meet of the 350 available, you can match it against one of these and work out where you're coming from. So this is the minimum amount you need to learn for any given verb in order to work out any other part of it. So if we take lamban as your root, that root changes in the future to lerps, changes in the aorist to lab, and then changes in the and then changes again in the perfect to lerf, and in the perfect passive to lam, and in the aorist passive to length. And then you start mucking around with endings. So present lambano. The future, that sigma is already in the psi, so now you just need your endings, and actually it's become a middle verb. Aorist, you still need to augment it. And now you've got those imperfect endings on the changed stem. And then the perfect and the aorist passive do slightly weird things. You actually get epsilon iota there, epsilon iota there, and then just an epsilon there again. And then an alpha there, my there, my there, and then again there. So lambano and alamphen look nothing like each other. And you really need to learn all 6 of these to be able to understand any given form of lambano. So if you look at pages 253 to 254 in Duff, he gives you a chart of the ones you need to know. He explains these later on in the book. I will add to Canvas another list that I think is a very useful list of the most common 50 verbs that you need to learn. If you look in other grammar books, you'll find that there are up to 200 verbs given to you in this category. 200 is excessive. If you can get to grips with 50, you'll cope with anything you see in the New Testament.